Next, we will have Department of Ohio Media Marketing and Communications Commission Chair Holly Lewis. She will speak to us about best practices for hosting virtual meetings. Thank you.
Morning. Yo, yo, yo. How's everybody? You awake? Ready to go? How many of you all have a virtual component to your post meeting? Good. Awesome. Well, I want to talk to you about that today, and I want to encourage you to consider it, especially at the post level, at your district level, at your department level, because really what virtual meetings help do is improve connection. So we've had a lot of conversation about communication today, and I'm all about communication, but really I think what we need is connection. Okay? So my name is Holly Lewis. Like I said, I was the department chair for media and communications for the Department of Ohio. I recently turned that over to a new person. It was glorious. And I have been managing virtual teams for 30 years internationally. And I had a very large team in Canada for a very long time of 100 employees. And I only made it to Canada every 3 months. So I had to get really good at figuring out how to manage people over the phone. And I also run a successful online business where all of my clients are actually virtual, and my community as well. All right, let's see if I can do this. All right, so we're going to cover basically the benefits of virtual meetings, what to do about figuring out the tech for the virtual meetings, the best practices, and some etiquette. So like I said, communication is merely an exchange of information. Connection is an exchange of our humanity. And that was Sean Stevenson that said that in Get Off Your Butt. And really, if you think about it, this is what we want, is connection with our members. Right? And so a way to do that is through virtual meetings. I didn't realize there was all these transitions in this thing. Okay. Woo! All right. So the benefits of virtual meetings is it fosters inclusiveness. How many of you all have members who can't actually physically make it to a meeting? Yeah. Right? Sometimes people are sick, especially in the times of COVID, right? If somebody tests positive, you really don't want them coming to your meeting, do you? Right? But they may feel fine and can participate. It promotes transparency. One of the things that used to drive me crazy when I first started at my post was how there were little cliques of people who made all the decisions. It used to drive me nuts. But virtual meetings actually fosters transparency, especially if you record them. Business gets done even when the circumstances don't cooperate. In Ohio, we have awful weather. Sometimes it's 150 degrees and sometimes it's minus 50. So you don't let the circumstances get in your way for a virtual meeting. It saves money on travel budgets. One of the things that astounded me was how much money the department was paying for people to come to a 1-hour meeting. I couldn't understand that. I was like, why would you do that when we can do it virtually? And you're more likely to have a quorum. So that used to drive me crazy too. We'd have a meeting, have to drive 3 hours for it, and you wouldn't even have a quorum. So you couldn't even do business. So it is a great way to provide the ability to have a quorum if you have a hybrid type meeting. How many of you all do a hybrid type meeting? Hybrid. So part of it's in person, some people are in person, and you also have a virtual component. Yeah, really, really something to consider, you all, because allows for a quorum. It allows more people to participate. You know, for me, I used to travel for my job, and I was the adjutant at my post. I would have never made a post meeting because I was on the road. So we did a virtual segment where I actually was on Zoom with the meeting so that I could participate in the meeting and be there. All right, so figuring out the tech. Here's what I'm gonna tell you. Just like, what was your first name? Bobby. Just like Bobby said, you gotta figure out what your requirements are first, okay? And I'm gonna give you some things to consider in terms of the requirements that you might need. So how much can your group afford to pay for the service? Or does it have to be free? I will tell you, for my virtual business online, I have Zoom, and I pay $175 a year. You could do a little fundraiser, raise $175, and there you go. They're all about that price, and for an hour or unlimited participants. How many people on average will there be on a session? Because there is some price differences between the number of people that you're going to have on. I think Zoom at $175 a year, it's like 100 people you can have on. Okay? Do the majority of your people have the ability to launch an app on their smartphone? How many of you all in here have Zoom or Teams or something like that on your smartphone? Amazing, right? And just like Bobby said, it's a fallacy that older people can't figure out how to run virtual meetings on their phones. It's not true. You just have to have a little bit of patience and teach people how to do it, okay? Do you need to provide the ability for attendees to call in? Okay, so some of the services have a actual call-in number where somebody could call from their phone versus doing it from an app. Okay? Do you need functionality for the attendees to be able to vote with like a button? Okay, so Zoom, for example, has a raise hand button, or you could just do it the old-fashioned way, like raise your damn hand, right? Okay? Do you need to be able to share documents? So that's another thing that some of the services have and some of them don't. So if you want to be able to share the agenda or you want to be able to share a presentation, some of the services are in or out based on that. Do you have people who are savvy enough to teach other people how to use the technology? Okay, so this might be a consideration for you. If you don't have anyone who's tech savvy, you might want to go with one of the more simple services, okay? And do you already own a software package that provides a virtual meeting component? So if you own Microsoft Office, Teams is part of that. You can use Teams. That's what National uses. If you own G Suite, Google Meet is part of that. So you can use the stuff that you already have. It's just an exploration of what you already have. All right. So there are all kinds of options out there. And I just want to give you some food for thought. You can use virtual meeting software such as Zoom, WebEx, Teams, Slack, GoToMeeting, Google Meet, whatever. Or you could also use some asynchronous communication methods that are out there that I personally love, like Marco Polo, Facebook Live. You might want to do a Facebook Live to a private group so that you can only get comments, right? And people aren't actually, able to speak at the meeting. That might work for you, okay? There are things like Volley that you can do web video and it's one way, so people could actually watch what's going on. You can use conference lines, such as Uber Conference or free conference call. We actually started at my post using Uber Conference because it was a lot easier for our members to figure out how to dial a phone number than it was for them to download an app. We've since progressed to Zoom, but we started with Uber Conference. Remember, there's really no perfect answer, right? If you're thinking there is a right answer, there's not. You have to treat it like an experiment. Just see what works. You know, it's a monthly fee, so if you don't like it, you can cancel, right? If it's not working for you. So just experiment with it and be open to playing around with it. We're going to transition. Okay, there we go. So for the things that we have to learn before we can do them, we learn by doing them, right? So you can think about this all day long, but unless you try it and see what works and what doesn't, you're not going to get to a point where it's going to work for you. So 4 really key things, and then there's some more, but have a setup day and actually practice. So if you don't do this on a normal basis, have a little party, have a little luncheon, get people to bring in their phones, get yourself a team to install Zoom or Teams or whatever on their phones so that they can figure out how to use it and have a practice. Remember, be patient, right? And this is as much for me as it is for you because I've been doing this stuff for 20-something years. But sometimes I get a little impatient with people because I'm like, this is not that hard. But again, I've done it for 20 years and I have to remember that. So you got to be patient about it. Enlist a moderator. So if you're going to have more than 7 people on a call, you need to have a moderator, okay? The chair should not be the person responsible for figuring out that people have questions or want to say something or figuring out how to mute people, okay? So just ask for a volunteer to be the moderator. Make sure your sound is on point. Nothing drives me crazier than being on a virtual meeting where half the people are in place and half of us are on the call and you can't hear anything. Drives me nuts. So you have to make sure that you have a really good phone speaker system in the actual physical location so that everyone can hear. All right? And record for posterity. A lot of people don't like to do this. I think it's crazy. I'm the adjutant at my post. I record all of our meetings because that way I can go back and do the minutes, right? And I'm not missing anything. And then we just file them. And then that way, if there is ever a question about who made that motion, who said this, what was the discussion, blah, 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 I just pull up the recording. There you go. It's right there. Okay? Couple other things. Send out the agenda ahead of time. People want to know, what are we going to be talking about? So just make sure you send out the agenda ahead of time. Remind the participants not to dial in on their PC and on their phone because it will echo. Okay? So you just got to remind people of that. Take roll call during the meeting to acknowledge who is present because people who call in on a phone aren't always recognizable in the software. I mean, you'll see a phone number, but you won't know who that is, right? So you want to make sure that you know who's on the meeting. And there's hackers out there that like to jump on virtual meetings, so you want to make sure that there's a password associated with your meeting. It's not just an open meeting, okay? Make sure you test the features to mute all participants. I've been on lots of calls where they've muted all the participants and never told anyone how they could get off mute. So, and they didn't know how to get them off mute. So you want to test all of that because every software package is different about how they do the mute all and unmute. Okay? Now remember, there's lots of webinars out there, lots of YouTube videos. I tell you what, you can learn how to do anything on YouTube. I'm a firm believer in that. So if you get some software, there's all kinds of tutorials that you can watch about the features, how this stuff works. Just don't be afraid to experiment with it. All right, I talked about a moderator earlier, so I just want to give you some food for thought about what the duties of a moderator are. So they remind people to mute, and they are prepared to mute people who can't figure out where the mute button is. Okay? They alert the chair when somebody has something to say, right? So they're basically watching the room, the virtual room, and if they can see that somebody wants to say something, they'll alert the chair that, hey, so-and-so has something to say. Encourage the use of raising of hand, either with the feature or actually just raising your hand, right? And for members to request to speak, voting, it's really important to follow Robert's Rules of Order. So you want to still follow Robert's Rules of Order even if you're on a virtual meeting. Okay? Record the meeting. And what you want to do here is you want to tell people that you're recording the meeting. That way they have the opportunity to be out if they don't want to be recorded. And some people are like that. So, but you want to record the meeting, I think, for transparency. And then you want to answer any questions in the chat. So a lot of the meetings I will tell you that I have, where I have a couple hundred people on there, there's a lot of conversation happening in the chat. And so the moderator actually watches the chat and lets me know, hey, Holly, so-and-so has this question, right? So that I can answer that question. Same thing if you're doing a Facebook Live. If you have a moderator who's watching the comments, they can alert you to what the comments actually are. Okay? All right, so let's talk about etiquette. And this is my pet peeve, so I might get a little animated about this. I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. When they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. This is really what the intention of a virtual meeting is, right? You want people to connect. You want them to feel like they're being seen and heard. This is why we do it. So from the chair's perspective, stick to the agenda. Don't ramble. That drives me crazy. Don't ramble. Just stick to the agenda. When feasible, specifically ask each member if they have something to contribute. We even do this in our in-person meetings. We go around the room, right? Now, if you have 100 people on a virtual meeting, that might not be possible. But if you have 15, you should be doing that, okay? Allow enough time for all to vote who wish to vote. Those who are newer to the tech might need a little time, so don't try and rush it. You know, be patient with people. If they can't figure out how to virtually raise their hand, just tell them, raise your hand, okay? A lot of times, people don't turn on the cameras either because they don't know, right, how to turn on the camera. And here's another thing. Do not allow people to talk over each other, even in person. Keep control of your meeting and just don't allow that, because let people finish and then move on to the next person. All right, participant etiquette. This is my pet peeve for those of you that follow me on Facebook. Context switching. Does everybody know what context switching is? Okay. Huh? Right. So if you're listening to me right now and you're texting on your phone someone, you're context switching. Okay? And so if you're going to participate in a meeting, pay attention. Why are you here? Why are you on the call? If you're going to be texting or doing something else, why? It's a waste of your time because you're not paying attention. So go do whatever you want to do, but you cannot do two things at once. It's not possible. We have a single processor up here. It is not possible to do two things at once. Mute yourself when you're not actively speaking. So I just say what I got to say, go back on mute. I just make it a habit, go back on mute, because God knows what's going to happen. Just like Matt this morning, the cat comes on the screen, your kid walks in the door, you know, who knows? So just mute yourself. Raise your hand when you want to speak, either in real life or in the tech. Don't talk over people, and don't eat. I mean, seriously. At least turn your camera off. Nobody wants to see that. Right? Nobody wants to see that. So just turn your camera off. All right. That is it for me. So what questions do we have? Woo.
My first question is, and it's not much of a question because I figured it out, to be able to do a virtual meeting while we're doing a meeting. So we were doing both. We didn't have the necessary backup from our Constitution and bylaws. So we ended up having to change our Constitution and bylaws to allow for virtual meetings.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. If you have specifics about things being in person, you might have to do some tweaks on your Constitution and bylaws.
Thank you, Holly. And that was part of what my question was going to be. How much have you run across in different states where virtual meetings were not allowed? So, for example, I'm from New Jersey, and until January of this year, initially the governor gave us the permission during an emergency, and it's now been amended, so we have to amend our bylaws to permit it. So department has, just feeding that down to the post level. Have you run across that very much?
Yeah, we didn't have those restrictions in Ohio. We didn't have any kind of a language that said in person. So we have not. Have any of you guys run into that from a state perspective, that you had to be in person? There was like actual language that said in person? Yeah?
I'm from Minnesota. At our first DEC, that was after the pandemic came down and everything, that we before the meeting, they had talked to our judge advocate about the bylaws and the ways that we needed to amend them, and so they amended them immediately and then held the meeting. So
Yeah, so you might have to do that. You might have to examine your language, right, in your Constitution and bylaws to see if there's any restrictions about that. Okay, do you have a question?
Oh. Well, this was worth the price of admission. I've been doing Zoom meetings for other organizations since pandemic started, and I did not realize you could do closed captioning from Zoom. Yeah. Do you do it within the Zoom app, or do you use one of the third-party applications?
Yeah, I actually use the live transcript within Zoom, especially for my business, and then I publish the transcript as well. But you can do closed captioning from within Zoom itself. Teams, I think there's a feature within Teams that you can do closed captioning as well. There's like a live transcript that you can run on the side so people can see what's actually being said. It translates what's being said into actual text. So,
Holly,
yeah.
thank you for the information. How do you link if you want to show a video in the Zoom?
Yeah.
It's a little bit, I don't know. Can you explain how it can be done?
Yeah, so when you share in Zoom itself, there's a little button that says, it's in the corner that you can actually click to broadcast the audio. So like if there's an audio in the video, there's a little button you have to click to broadcast the audio. So if you don't do that, then they can't hear it. They can't hear the video. Yeah, you could just share it. You can just share share that screen. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just one more question. Basically, more etiquette. You know, you always see people, we're always taught to stand up and salute the flag and
Mhm.
say what we need to say.
Yep.
Has that changed for the meetings or anything? We still do that? Absolutely.
Yeah,
I see
we.
some people sitting, and I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the flag police on my meetings, but you know, for the most part, we all still do the same thing you would do as if you were at an actual meeting, right? So if you would stand to do the pledge, stand to do the pledge. If you are uncovered for the prayer, do that, right? So as part of the etiquette. I mean, if you can't stand, just like if you were at a meeting, you wouldn't stand, right? If you can't stand, so stay in your seat.
Hi, Holly. You just reminded me of something that we run into because we do run, all our meetings are hybrid meetings. When you are doing your opening ceremonies on Zoom and the people that are actually in the meeting are doing the pledge or they're doing the preamble or anything like that, and you've got people that are on Zoom virtually, there seems to be a lag in the communication. Is there a way to control that or fix that?
Yeah, I would probably, it depends on your internet connection, right? How good your internet connection is, how much of a lag there would be. You know, sometimes I will tell you, like when I'm on a Zoom call and I live in the middle of West Virginia where my internet is sometimes really good and sometimes not, right? So sometimes I have to turn off my camera in order for my connection to stabilize. So I would still encourage people to be on mute. You don't need to unmute yourself to say the pledge and that kind of thing. That way there's no kind of lag, is what I would say.
Hi, Holly.
Yeah.
Over here, Dave. Sit next to you. So I'm glad we're on the technology part of Zoom. And this might be a YouTube answer. Casting.
Mm-hmm.
At my post, got a smart TV.
Yep.
Take the laptop up. Purchased a camera so people there can see here and we can cast.
Mm-hmm.
Other places say I don't have a television camera, so if I wanted to host a Zoom meeting here, I could put my laptop up, I could use my phone as a camera, but now I want to cast it up to that smart television.
Mm-hmm.
Within the Zoom application, is there, without carrying cables with you, because the different, is there an easy answer for that? Because we travel to hotels a lot, and posts have bars and TVs, and it's like, okay, I'm going to have my meeting here, and I want it on all 7 of those televisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you'll
So-
have to play around with it. I will tell you that Zoom definitely has a Facebook Live integration, so you can definitely cast a Facebook Live going on. You know, if you have apps like Facebook or even a Zoom app, Screen Cloud, those kind of things, those casting kind of apps on your smart TV, you can definitely cast those as well. So I think you'll just have to play around with it. What is the most universal in terms of like when you're traveling and stuff. Okay. All right. One more question.
One recommendation. At the beginning, you talked about having the good speakerphone in the middle of the room.
Mm-hmm.
What we did, and I want to explain this, is there are some very inexpensive and good wireless microphone systems
Yes.
that for less, or for about $100, you get 2 wireless mics just like these that you can connect to your laptop or computer. And with that in mind, the chairman of the meeting can have their microphone, and you have the sergeant of arms, kind of like what we're doing here, with that microphone, and highly recommend that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great idea. Great idea, because nothing drives me crazier than not being able to hear what people are saying, right? And having to say, could you repeat that? Because we can't hear. Okay? All right, well, thank you so much, everyone. And I'm going to give it up for the next speaker.
Thank you,